Hey everybody, this is Mike Feldbauer from the Flagler County Drug Court Foundation, coming to you from the Flagler Voice podcast studio. And today on our Road to Recovery podcast, our friend Robert is back with us. He is, I think this is his fourth visit, and we're hoping that he will continue because Robert brings to the table a lot of wealth of experience in his years in recovery. His desire to help people and give people hope in their recovery, and to get our general audience an understanding of what people in recovery are going through. So we're going to say, hello, Robert.
Hey, Mike, it's always good to be here. And before we go any further, I want to thank you for your involvement in drug court and all the things that you do as a person who has not experienced some of the same things I've experienced yet. There's a certain amount of empathy that you have for a man or a woman who's abandoned their children, who can't stay out of jail, who doesn't even have a Florida driver's license, and yet you continually assist them in trying to find a right path through the different resources. So on behalf of the recovery community, those men and women who are like me, we thank people like you who, through their own empathy and their own journey, seem to understand our challenges, even though you don't understand what it's like being an alcoholic or drug addict. You understand what it's like to lose and what it's like to gain. So for that, I'm very grateful.
Well, I thank you for that. But again, for my audience out here that is listening to this, remember, I may be the voice and the face of the Flagler County Drug Court Foundation, but we have a team of people that have a heart to help people in recovery. And that's what the Flagler County Drug Court Foundation is all about, helping. Many of our members have been there, done that, as yourself. Mm-hmm. Some of them have. We have a couple of members that have lost their children to overdoses and are dedicating their lives to help people not go through what they went through. Most of what they can, educating our community, not just helping the people in the drug court program, because now we have that dual purpose. We help those who are in the program with things the court can't do for them, that remove some of the burdens they have so they can concentrate on their recovery.
Yeah.
But then we also are out there teaching people in the community what addiction is all about. And whether you call it addict or substance abuser, the terminologies today get you, whether you're politically correct in the voice or not, it's still the same thing. We want to help people that are suffering. We want to continue to give them hope so they can continue in their journey to be a good, solid, healthy citizen again. So
that's so important when you mention the word team, because although there's certain people I didn't meet till later on in my journey, yet they were here when I got here, essentially. So individuals who, I've been sober over 39 years, but people who have been here 40, 41. I know a person who's 50 years sober, 53 years sober, and they kept the hope alive and kept the doors open, that when a person like me showed up who had so many problems, he despaired over solving any of them. And they were there as an example of what could be done if one was willing to apply themselves to the plan of recovery. So for those individuals, I'm very grateful, because it does take a team approach.
It does. There's no question about it. No one can do it alone. No one can do it alone. No one can force somebody into the world of recovery. It's got to be something that they desire. But when the desire is there, you need that team around them to support them, to continue to give them hope. Because it's not a smooth ride. No. There's a lot of bumps and curves in the road. And so we got to be there, make sure no one goes off the edge of the road. Or they fly into the bump. Into the valleys without people there to help support them.
You bring up something very interesting as far as no one can do it alone. When I was out drinking and using, when I was abandoning my wife and my children and family members and loved ones, there was a sense of loneliness that was so despairing, was so challenging. I tell people I was at a Jethro Tull. This will really age me, but I was at a Jethro Tull concert back in the '74, and I remember I was with 100,000 people in this at the LA Coliseum, people everywhere around me. It was shoulder to shoulder, and yet, Mike, there was an aloneness I felt. So even in a crowd of like-minded people who were all high or drunk, and yet there was a sense of loneliness that I felt that I still remember to this day. How can you be with so many people and yet be alone? And I remember the first time I walked into the rooms of recovery and I realized I was never going to be alone again. There was a fellowship, there was an understanding. The big book talks about, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, is indescribably wonderful. You know, when you're out searching for that magic panacea, that drug, that drink, that person that can fix you, and you finally get to the end of your loneliness and you walk into a room and you never have to be alone again. It's, Mike, I want everyone to feel that. And that's why you and I, we do what we can do for the individual, because we understand loneliness that few people understand.
There's no question about it. You're right on target. Now, you told me earlier, we have a special topic for today.
We
so what's
do.
what's that topic going to be today?
You know what? It's surrender. As I travel a lot and I speak a lot, this last weekend I was in the Salt Lake Valley speaking at a treatment center, and then Saturday, interestingly enough, I spoke to an Al-Anon group, which is an interesting concept, but they wanted to hear my story and get some hope. But I thought about the 12 steps and how I could best articulate. And although I'm a student of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, for which I make no apologies, in the first 164 pages, Mike, that is the plan of recovery, although the word surrender is never mentioned, it says abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Even though the word is not mentioned, if we don't surrender to a power greater than ourselves, if we don't surrender to the drug, to the alcohol, to the gambling, whatever our condition is, behavioral or substance, if we don't surrender to it, then we'll never get well. We'll never recover from that seamless, hopeless state of mind and body. So surrender is a term that's necessary, and it's also transient. You know, I surrender today in a different way than I surrendered when I was 30 days, 60 days sober, but I'm still surrendering. I'm still wanting to see if I give up myself, how much more can I be to the next person? How much more can I understand what God expects of me and is willing to do for me what I can't do for myself? So surrender is an ongoing process and relevant whether you're brand new facing the judge. And Mike, it's interesting. We surrender to different things, as you know, in drug court. Sometimes they're surrendering to the system.
Yes.
An individual may surrender because they don't want to go to jail.
Exactly.
An individual may surrender because they don't want the locks changed at their house, or they surrender because they don't want to be fired. And that's an outward surrender. But if we don't surrender on an inside spiritual basis, Mike, there's no hope for us.
Well, you know, I tell people I've been involved with the drug court system now for about 13 years.
Yep.
And two things that come up every time that I do that. First of all, I've never met one person that wanted to become an addict or substance abuser. Never one. But you're right. Well, a lot of people that come into the drug court program that are offered it as an alternative do it to get out of jail.
Yeah.
And we see sometimes it takes 2, 3, even 4 months or so while they're in the program to finally get to them to the point to say, you know what? I really want this. It's not just to keep me out of jail. It's changed my life.
Yes.
And that's the goal we have. And we know it doesn't happen overnight. It's just, that's the way out there. Because up to that point, they can work the program. They can be sober for the entire time they're in there, and the next day when it's over, they go back to it. But when they get to that point where they understand, I want to make the change, I'm going to use this to help me change, that's when success comes in and when longer-term recovery starts to take place. And when they see that even when I'm out of the program, I still have hope. And of course, we encourage the people that are in the program, once you graduate, we don't go away.
Yeah.
We're still there if you need us.
As
you
a
know,
resource.
we are a resource. Everybody has our phone numbers. Okay? If you need that call and you're trying to get somebody else and you can't, you call us. We'll do what we can. We'll listen.
Yeah.
That's the important thing, I think, right? Listening.
It's Winston Churchill said, everyone wants to learn, but no one wants to be taught. And becoming and remaining a student along the way. Though I want to go back to something that's so important that you and I understand. I've never known a person who showed up on a Saturday morning when the sun was out and think, you know what, I think I need to change my life. Why don't I go into treatment? It doesn't work that way.
No.
We're usually grabbing and holding on to that last chance, that last do it our way. And there's this word called coercion, where I would like to think I'm a good person, therefore I'm in recovery. But Mike, for me, I was afraid of dying. There was that element where I was alone, as loneliness could never be experienced or never could be explained by any definition. But there was a sense of emptiness in me. And if I didn't change that day, I was going to die. So I was afraid of death more than, I was already threatened by judges. I was already threatened by alimony. I was always threatened by my ex-wife. I was already fired. Nobody in my family wanted me around anymore. Friends, they said, you drink a little bit too much. Even meth dealers, guys who cook meth, they said, you can't come around anymore because you hit the pipe a little bit too much. That's the kind of person I was. So I was abandoned on every level. And all those stop signs I blew through. And finally, I was going to die. And I was 32 years old, Mike. And I was going to die. And there was nothing I could do about it. That was my coercion. That's what got me into treatment for the first time. So everyone out there in our listening audience, we like to think we're in treatment because we're a good person. We're not a good person. We're sick. And we do bad things as a result of that. And that's one of the things we have to understand. We're very sick individuals. Like, the difference is, though, getting a pronouncement of cancer, a terminal illness, alcoholism and drug addiction is treatable. I know far too many people who have gotten well, who have recovered with varying degrees of time, who are well to this day because they stay. You have to stay in treatment, just like surrender. You have to stay in the position of surrender in order for this thing to work.
And I think, Robert, you hit on a very important thing, too. Until you have that need, like you didn't want to die.
Yeah.
We all need something to hang on to that encourages us to get rid of what we need to get rid of. I've told the story again, and I'll keep telling it. I was a 2-pack-a-day guy, smoking. We all know that nicotine is actually more difficult to give up
Yes, it is.
than almost any drug or alcohol out there. And I had quit 6 times, and I had relapsed 6 times. But then there came a time where I had what I needed to have to hang on to do it. So that last cigarette for me is going on 43 years ago. So I do have that understanding. My difference between folks that have gone through what you've gone through or some of the people in our drug court, they weren't going to arrest me for smoking. Okay, I wasn't going to go to jail. I wasn't going to sit. But I had the same difficulty, and I went through the same issues to try to get there. What made it for me? I was going to have a child soon. We didn't know exactly when because my daughter's adopted, but we knew that. And I said to myself finally, you can't do to that child what your loving father, who he was, did to me. As a World War II vet, almost all of them came back addicted to smoking because they were given free cigarettes.
Yeah.
And he'd sit there and tell me, don't do this, it's not good.
Yeah.
But what did I see? So what I hung on to is I couldn't do that to whatever this child was going to be. They were going to see somebody that did not smoke. And then it got even more intense because when we did get the information on our child, all 4 grandparents were alcoholics. So we made a decision as a family at that point. No alcohol in the house. Going to grow up knowing you don't need it. Your choice, and she had to learn the fact that the switch was theirs, okay? But that child knew that where that was and the dangers because of DNA stuff. So I've learned a lot about the world of addiction just through my own life in those things. And hanging on to it. You decided you didn't want to die. Me, I decided I didn't want my child to go through that. Gave me what I need. Individuals hang on different things.
Yes.
It's not the same for everybody.
Yeah. And each person gets the treatment for a different reason.
Yep.
Some through the courts, some through a relationship, some through finances, some through employment, some through family members. So we all get in varying ways, but why we stay determines whether or not we stay or whether we leave. Because at some point, Mike, you and I were discussing this off air, at some point, the person leaves probation, they leave the court system, they leave that thing that's hanging over their head that says, if you don't do this, this is going to happen to you. Yep. And so once that pressure gets off of you, that's going to determine whether or not you stay well. And some point, we need to transition from external repercussions to internal happiness and internal joy. And that's where surrender comes in. In the beginning, I surrendered to the judge, I surrendered to the wife, I surrendered to the employer. But somewhere, I have to say, you know what? I love this life I'm living. I love the relationship with God that I've been able to develop. I love people smiling at me saying what I am, not what I could have been. And when that occurs in my life, it's like having an unlimited supply of your favorite food. All you want to do is devour that one thing because you know that one thing makes you feel better. You become as addicted to feeling good as you did as wandering aimlessly, becoming a victim of your own choices rather than a victor of the power that's greater than us. And that's what we have to surrender to. That is a must. If we don't surrender, we die.
Exactly. And I've seen that time and time again, going through the programs that I've been involved with and seeing the success stories and then getting involved with what made it successful.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is what made it successful. You know, you get all of a sudden, I've been involved with this for 15, 20 years. Wow, I can't believe the life I'm living now.
Yeah.
Okay. And I want that life. I want to continue that life. And, it's just that's the other thing. It keeps us involved with what we do. Because, again, I tell people, being involved with and working in the world of recovery, it's like being bipolar. We get the great news, we see the good stuff, and then every once in a while we'll get that phone call that brings us down. But it's those who succeed and their stories that we get to tell other people to pass it on. It's what keeps us going and keeps us involved in saying, yeah, we're not going to give up. We're going to stick to that word of hope for everyone.
It's so... Certain things might never get old. Just recently, I was coming back from a meeting in Ormond, and as I'm getting off the freeway at Palm Coast, because I live in Palm Coast, and I'm getting off the freeway, and a sheriff pulls behind me for whatever reason. Maybe they were getting off, maybe they were following me, and I saw the sheriff behind me, and it was no big deal. I have a valid driver's license. It's my car. The registration's current, and I have this thing called insurance. And I thought, you can pull me over, and it was no big deal. And there was a time, Mike, where if a law enforcement got behind me, it was like, oh crap, what do I do with the drink? What do I do with the weed? What do I do with this? Are they going to take me to jail and tow my car because I haven't had it registered for a year, or they find out that I'm driving on a suspended driver's license, something like that. And certain things never get old. Freedom, Mike, never gets old, but everything starts with surrender. If I don't surrender to my addiction, as in step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol or drugs or whatever your whatever makes you feel good, that my life had become unmanageable. If we don't surrender to that person, place, thing, or substance, we'll never get to step 2. If I don't surrender to the fact that I'm actually insane, because no sane person does the same thing over and over again and expects a different result.
Right.
Unless I surrender to those things, and surrender is to give up power, and that's what's interesting. In the program of recovery, I give up power to attain power. In my active addicted life, if you asked me surrender, that meant if I surrendered, you took what I had. In the recovered life, if I surrender, I get more of what is not killing me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And
There's no
it's
question about it.
essential.
Yeah. No, I these conversations just expand upon my belief in what we're doing is the right thing, to get that information out to people. And to get that information out, you said you did an Al-Anon meeting.
Yes.
To get that information out to family members so they have a better understanding what their family is going through. And because they're going through something and they're going to need that same hope.
Yeah.
Okay. They're going to need that type of surrender to deal with the issues they're dealing with their own family.
Yeah.
So it's there. It is life, and we have to admit that's the direction. That's the way we have to look at it, and getting to that point.
Surrender. One of the greatest things about surrender, Mike, is it's free. I just have to do it. It doesn't cost me anything to surrender. Matter of fact, it gives me everything. And surrender is an interesting word. And before we get too far, it says to give up oneself, to give up to some influence, emotion, to give up, to abandon or relinquish, to give up hope that alcohol or drugs can make me feel better as my life is crumbling around me. There was a time, Mike, where I would defend my drinking. I would defend my using. My number one purpose in life, as Father Martin says, is to protect the supply, because I didn't think I could survive without it. I needed to be so many things to so many people. I lost an idea of who I was. And it was only surrender that I found myself. I'm like other people who didn't judge me, who cared about me. And to this day, Mike, the people who loved me, my father's passed away, my mom has passed away, but I got great closure. They just wanted to see me well.
Yes.
I had a great conversation with my brother George yesterday. People I thought were against me, actually, my brother George one time said, if we could do anything for you, we would, but we ran out of options. We didn't know what to do. And it hurt him so much. And I thought all the while he wanted me to be somebody I couldn't be. He just wanted me to be what he saw, the potential he saw in me. Because every one of us out there addicted to alcohol, drugs, or behavior, especially alcohol and drugs, we have potential that is unmatched. I mean, a person walks into drug court one day and the judge says, you have to do this, do that, and the other, and the group that's involved to help them along the way, they come back in 6 months and you can't even recognize them because there's a smile on their face, there's a light in their eye, they've got a job that they can show up on Monday instead of Wednesday. All of a sudden they go to the tax controller office. In other states we call it the DMV, but they can actually get their license reinstated. I mean, all these things, and you're saying, wait a minute, you're not the same person who walked in here 6 months ago. Something has happened to you. Tell me what it is. And invariably, Mike, it's going to be they surrendered to a power that's greater than them, who could give them everything they were ever looking for in life. And that's what I have found.
That's a great definition of it. And again, we see that time and time again. And it's the things that keep us going in the world that we work within. To see those success stories coming out. I saw a young lady a couple of days ago that did a great job coming through drug court. But I also remember the day that she came in with her family to be interviewed.
Yeah.
And she was a total, I mean,
We get
I
that
haven't
thing.
seen too many people this messed up
Yeah.
coming in to try to get into drug court,
Yeah.
or being told that she should come into drug court. She was there with her mother on one side of the table, her father, and they had been divorced on the other side of the table. And we're sitting in there, myself and the drug court coordinator. And you go back to that day and how messy it was. And then what I see now, which is so incredible. Just, I mean, it's got to be beyond 180 degrees, but you don't want to go beyond 180 degrees because that gets you back to zero. But you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's bigger than that success.
Yeah.
And we want those people to come in here and tell their stories, because that's the encouragement
Yeah.
that people out there still need.
You know, and you bring up something that's so important. You know, I've got 39 years, 4 months, and 30 days today. And a long time. And I am counting. But oftentimes that newcomer that's 4 months, 6 months, 8 months can be more valuable than me. And if I want to feel better about me, I go help somebody feel better about themselves. And sometimes, very often, the newcomer can see the person who's sober 3, 4, 5 months much better than they can see me. They look at my recovery and they say, oh, I could never achieve that. That's a lifetime. But they can see that person who's 3, 4, 5 months sober. And, you know, when we give other people hope, it increases our level of hope, our level of surrender. When we convince them that surrender is the way, we surrender to a deeper sense. And that gives us the hope. We just want to make a positive difference, because we've been so destructive for so long. Everything we touched, we destroyed. And now we can have an impact, a positive impact in the life of a man or a woman that can really last. I'm working with a fellow right now. He's sober 75 days, 76 days. And I'm telling him, I'm saying, if you want to be better sober, go focus on your marriage. Go minister to your wife. And before that, he was thinking, I need to get well. I need to go to more meetings. I said, no, you need to go. We don't hardly know you. Your wife has been tolerating your nonsense for 20 years. And it's not to negate the importance of meetings.
Right.
But if the significant other is going to appreciate what's the transformation of surrender, if I don't surrender to her or to him, it doesn't matter what else I surrender to. I need to surrender to the things that God has given me, and therefore I can become better. I told him, I said, you want to be more sober? Then go be a better husband. Be a better husband first, because it will increase your personal sobriety. Be a better employee. Be better at all the other things to the people that you weren't good to in the first place, and you will automatically be a more sober person. That's my philosophy.
Well, I think it's good. And I think we use that basic thing in the drug court program, because we require participants to do community service.
Yes.
So they're learning how to give back. Okay?
Yeah.
They're learning how to help in different situations that they weren't doing before.
Yeah.
Okay? Because they were so busy taking care of themselves, period, that they weren't taking care of other things that could have been taken care of.
Yeah.
They weren't given their God-given gifts. They weren't using their God-given gifts to help. Now you learn how to give back.
Yes.
Okay. And by giving back, and in your example, go back to the ones you treated the worst.
Yes.
And so they can see the hope that you have.
Yes.
And you can go back and give them the encouragement. Thank you for hanging in there at 20 years.
Yeah.
I tell the story again of some good friends we had back home in Rhode Island, husband and wife. And the husband at one point in time was a severe drunk and did some drugs and stuff too. And, it got really bad. And somebody asked his wife, why do you hang in there? She says, because I believe He's going to be okay someday.
Yeah.
And I'm the one who needs to benefit by that,
Yeah.
not somebody else.
Yes.
I'm not going to give him up
Yeah.
when he gets better to someone else.
Yeah.
I want him that way.
Yeah.
And that kept that marriage together. It
Yeah.
kept that marriage, and it's still together now. And I mean, we're talking 30 plus years when this incidences happen that would, most cases, would have destroyed the marriage.
Yeah.
Well, her decision was, no, I'm not going to let it destroy it. I'm not happy with what's going on. I'm not going to enable him to keep doing this kind of stuff, but I'm going to be here when he gets right.
You know, that is so important because that is a biblical principle.
Yes.
Jesus, who I make no apologies for believing in, as Christ is my higher power, and he said to go make disciples, to go teach people. You know, that was his reason for coming to earth, was to create an environment where men and women were wanting to go help men and women, and Christ didn't care. You know, the woman at the well, which is a famous biblical story where the disciples were going into town and buying food, and Jesus thought he would just rest upon the well. This woman approached him and said, "Do you want some water?" And Christ said, "I have water to give you where you will never thirst again. You will never be thirsty again if you drink my water." And the woman was very intrigued by that. And Jesus said, "Go get your husband." And she said, "I have no husband. I've had 4 or 5 husbands, and the man I'm living with now won't even give me his last name." Jesus didn't condemn her. He gave her life. And she was so excited that she ran and told the townspeople, "Come." And essentially she said, "See a man who knew everything about me and still loved me."
Yeah, because if you remember that whole part of that story was he told her
Yes. He
that you've
told
been
her.
married 4 or 5 times,
Yeah.
and what you have now is
Yeah.
not. So, and she wanted to know how you knew that.
How did you know?
How'd you
What
know?
was operating? And and that's what's waiting for us all. When we enter into recovery, when we begin to surrender, the second step is came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Then in step 3, we become willing to turn our will and our life, which is a surrender, over to him as we understand him. And in the beginning, that understanding is very challenging, but that just like surrender, that understanding grows to where we get to step 4, which is an inventory step. And then step 5, we admit to God. We surrender to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And everything, and the whole plan of recovery, Mike, is learning how to surrender. It's to God as you understand God. That Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous is not a program to teach us how not to drink or use. It's a program designed to teach us how to surrender to God. And because of that surrender, we get freedom. We don't get bondage when we surrender. We get a sense of freedom. I can go anywhere. I can do anything. I can help anyone. Mike, I can hold my head high no matter where I am, because I'm a person of the Most High. I am a person of recovery. I represent hope in other people, that they can have the same thing. And what's great is it's available to everyone who's willing to surrender.
And I think you'll agree with this next statement too, because I hear it from you. You can now do so much more, okay, in your world of recovery than you could have in your other way.
Yes.
Okay. However, it was far more difficult to maintain that other life than it is this life, right?
Oh,
when I talk to people going, I said, no. Your life was far more difficult in your addiction than it is coming out of the addiction. Yeah, we see that because the program that we're in at drug court is substantial. They got to work at it.
Yeah.
Okay. And some people complain. I said, listen, think back. Is this any more difficult than it was when you were in an active addiction? And when they can get to admit that, then they can understand, okay, no, this is not, it's hard program, but it's no harder than you were in active addiction when you were trying, when you were lying, when you were doing this, doing that, just to get what you needed to survive.
You know,
Now you don't have to do that.
Remembering what I said was like a constant battle. What lie did I tell to this person, to that person, to get myself out of that hot water, that predicament? And I would get caught in lies all the time because I didn't remember what I said to you. Now I say what I say, and I stand behind everything I say. Sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes I'm right, but my word is very consistent because I don't have to be chameleon. I can be one person to everyone rather than be a different person to everyone based on the relationship, based on what I want from you. But again, Mike, that comes from surrender. I surrendered to God as I understood him. And because of that, I give to others. And because I give to others, I tell people all the time, if I'm not willing to become third, I will never be first. If I'm never willing to become last, I'll never be first. And that's a biblical principle. Yes. And the whole reason, Mike, that I am well is to help the other person become well, because I want them to experience even a greater sense what I've experienced in my journey.
Well, Robert, we've come into an end of another episode. Yeah. We could probably just rattle on here for several hours.
We could.
But we are going to come to a close now, and I want to thank you once again for being with us, and we'll schedule your next time on.
It is such a pleasure.
You're going to continue to do this with us. It's going to be a regular event here at the studio and for the Road to Recovery podcast. So again, we thank you, and we thank everybody that's out there listening and what's going on in the world. Watch it, share it, tell your friends about it. Give them hope. That's what it's all about.
Yes, sir.
Y'all have a great day.